So my guest today is Cautious Clay for the first cut, and we are so excited to have you here with us today, Josh. It's great to have you. I'm should just go ahead and get all my fangirl stuff out of the way because I love your music. I've just been so
Thank
enamored
you
with you ever
so
since I
much.
heard Cold War, I guess was the first song that I've heard, and then I've been checking out everything that you've been putting out ever since. And we've been playing it on WFPK, so it's a real thrill to have you here today.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
Yes. So, how about we just jump right in and get into the first cut questions here, because we want to know what you think about these things. What was the first
Ooh.
record that you fell in love with?
And that's a really hard one. There's quite a few off the top of my head, but I want to say front to back, I'd have to say Mama's Gun by Erica Badu. I was, I don't know, it was probably one of the third or fourth albums that I ever got as a kid. I went through a lot of different phases like rock and pop, punk and R&B and things, but I think I found that song at a record store. I used to go to the like record store and get CDs as a kid, and I remember just really liking the cover. And I think there might have been one song that I'd heard on the radio, and then I listened to the whole album, and I remember feeling like the just from the very first song, I was like, "Wow, this is so cool." So I don't know, it just kind of struck me.
Yeah. What was the first song you learned on an instrument? Because I know you're a multi-instrumentalist. You played several different
Yeah,
things.
yeah. So that was the first instrument, or the first song that I learned on an instrument was actually a classical piece by Haydn. He wrote a lot of pieces for the flute, and the flute was the first instrument that I learned. So um, that was my first piece of music.
How did you end up playing flute?
So I ended up playing flute because I guess I had really been into Aladdin and as a kid, and he played this sort of instrument that I thought was a flute, and it actually was like some sort of like chorded instrument, but it was just appealing to me, and I was like, oh, like I'd love to play the flute. You know, that's what I thought the flute was. I don't even remember how I knew what it was, but my mom was like, cool, like we'll set you up with some lessons. And then like I basically like rented a flute for a while, and then I ended up getting kind of good at it. So my mom bought me a flute, and then kind of the rest just kind of went with it.
Do you still play the flute?
I still play the flute. Yeah, I was actually playing yesterday, so it's sort of a part of my repertoire as a producer to have the flute kind of like ready to go, or just like the saxophone similarly.
But you also play several other instruments, right? What else do you play?
I play flute, I play saxophone. Those are definitely my main instruments, but I also play a little bit of drums and keys and guitar. Guitar is probably my third instrument, and then keys and drums are sort of like complementary just for like production purposes. And then bass, I guess, but that's sort of guitar. So
What was the first song you wrote?
first song I ever wrote, man, it was probably so bad. Actually, I know I think it was called Black Keys and Black Coffee. It was like a song I wrote on piano when I was in college. And if I were to find it now, I'd probably be too embarrassed to share it.
Were you in school for music? Is that what you
No,
did
so I
in
was
school?
actually, I minored in jazz studies, but I was a international affairs major. So I was doing like politics kind of stuff for 4 years, but then I was doing music throughout. So like taking classes for my minor. Um, but yeah, I always like to mess around in the piano studios.
What were you more passionate about, music or politics?
Definitely music, without a doubt. But I mean, I was sort of into words as well. Like I was really into writing. I was really into writing, but that was sort of like adjacent to obviously politics, but it was more creative writing, I think, that appealed to me.
What was the first heartache song that you connected with?
I get very attached to different artists at different times, and I went through a pretty heavy jazz period, and I think for me, Clifford Brown was a really important trumpet player and artist that I really connected with, and his playing really resonated with me. But I'd have to say like a song that I connected with, I guess on a deeper level, I'd have to say is a song that I wrote called Blood Type. It also ended up being the first EP that I ever released, and sort of like just embodied a lot of like my personal identity and just like my growth as a human being. So that had I guess a personal meaning for me.
If somebody were to check out Clifford Brown, what would you recommend they listen to first?
He did a really good thing with Max Roach, who's a really good drummer, and they did a whole album together that's really, really beautiful. But his playing, and I just feel like his approach was always just so touching. And I think also like his story, just because he actually passed away very young in a car crash, but he was like kind of set to be one of the top trumpet players in the early 50s and 60s, and like I was a really big jazz head as a kid. So I think that just resonated with me, and I think that like his playing resonated with me.
Yeah. What was the first artist you idolized?
I usually don't like idolize artists, but I do appreciate artists and like look up to artists. And I feel like as a kid, I definitely loved Pharrell. Like I was really big on his productions. I would say Pharrell was a really big, and I also really loved the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Those are I was really into them as a kid. That was actually one of my first concerts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What was the name of the first band you ever played with?
It was called Into the Crowd. I was probably sixth grader, and all my friends played guitar, and then I played flute, and we would play like coffee shops. Yeah.
So it's like fun. It was a guitar and flute band, and those were the only instruments, or?
So they were both singers, and no, there was two guitar players, a singer, and then I played flute, and it was the four of us, and we kind of did acoustic sets kind of thing, like all over. And yeah, it was great. It was definitely very yeah, it was like a learning experience for me, because I didn't really know. I'd never been in a band, let alone played flute kind of in a band that was not, it was sort of alternative rock. So yeah.
And you're a really good singer. Was that something that you worked on throughout your life, or when did you realize that you could sing?
Not at all. I mean, I always kind of sang as a joke, like maybe, oh, like I can sing, but I didn't really take it that seriously, because I don't know. I was always an instrumentalist. I always played flute literally since I was 7, and I always felt comfortable behind the instrument. I didn't really feel comfortable singing until I was a lot older. So yeah, it wasn't something I really started to take seriously until I was probably around 21. But yeah, it was something I kind of realized later that people liked it,
What do you feel like when you're on stage now and you don't have an instrument in your hand, or are you always with an instrument?
I've definitely played enough shows to the point where I can feel comfortable without an instrument on stage. It just took me quite a bit of time. Like even when I started to really, after I put out Cold War, it took me, several shows to really get comfortable with that idea of just sort of being a singer. But I do feel comfortable now. I think it just took so much time, it just took a lot of practice for me, because it wasn't something that I initially was good at, I guess.
Right. So now we're going to do a little lightning round and find out about where you are right now, such as what record are you listening to now that you're really loving?
Yeah, that's a great one. I really, really like. I'm really into Adrienne Linker. I can't remember the album, but she's a song called Paul that I really like. And I really just love her writing. But
she's from the band Big Thief.
Yes,
that's her band, right? Okay,
yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She's from the band Big Thief, and yeah, I just like a lot of. I think she just came out with the instrumentals project that I really liked. It was just nice, I've liked a lot of her stuff, but that one just was the first thing that came to mind. And then also Louis Del Mar is a really good band. They just put out a project that I really enjoy a lot. It's called August. Yeah, it's the album.
What's the most recent song you've learned to play?
Probably guitar, and it was "Take Off Your Cool" by Outkast.
What made you want to play that one?
I loved the song growing up, and I guess I was like, oh, I think I accidentally started playing it. I was trying something, and then I was like, I just kind of learned it, and I was like, okay, it's so easy. It's like four chords. So I just, yeah, I haven't played it live or anything, but I really loved it, and I just kind of stumbled into learning it, I guess.
What's a heartache song that you would go to now?
Probably Central Park West by John Coltrane.
What is it about
Yeah.
that piece of music?
It's just so soothing. It's just so soothing. I feel like whenever I'm sad or like whenever I'm kind of like not feeling great, I like just the horn and how he plays, just like da da da, just so like it makes me feel better like when things are not great. I think it's just about how it's orchestrated and how it moves.
Yeah. How are you dealing with the pandemic? What are you doing to occupy your time and how are you feeling?
Oh wow. I mean, I've been feeling pretty good. I've been very busy, surprisingly, just with random kind of like live shows and trying to finish my album. And I've also been working with some artists on some of their music. So I definitely have been occupied. But yeah, I think mentally it's definitely strange. You know, I haven't hugged people in quite a while, and touched people, and it's just interesting to kind of, I couldn't imagine growing up at a young age in this time period. It would be very strange. So
It would be so difficult. I agree. You
yeah.
said live shows? Are you're doing live shows?
Yeah, so we're doing live streamed shows. So it's like we'll set it up and then play it, and then they stream it live, or they save it for another occasion or something. But we did one for Save Our Stages, which was like a festival we played recently. But yeah, been using a lot of my time just on shows, and then also just like the creative direction for my album, which has been taking some time. So
When do you expect that to come out?
I'm probably March of next year, March or April.
Cool. You've been putting out
Yeah.
EPs up to this point, right? So this a full length album kind of thing, or
Yeah, it's a full length album. It's gonna be 12 to 13 songs, and yeah, it's taken a bit of time to sort of like put it all into one idea, but I feel I'm starting to feel really comfortable. It's taken literally the entirety of. I think I started thinking about it in January, February of this year, and I'm finally now getting to a place where it all kind of makes sense, but I don't think I might have had the songs earlier, but I don't think I would have been able to talk about it in a concise way until now. Um, so, but it feels good. Yeah.
well, good. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that or hearing that rather, and then maybe catching you on a live stream in the near future. And Josh, thank you so much for being with us today for First Cut. It's great to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
All right, take care.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye.